What's up? I'm Tyler,
And I'm Dakota,
and this is the Bourbon and Business Podcast.
where we interview successful businessmen and women to let you in on why success doesn't have a single formula to follow.
We also have a little bourbon tasting along the way because why not? Why not?
So guys, please enjoy this episode and let us know your thoughts at Bourbon and Business Podcast on Instagram.
Coming to you from the Bourbon and Business Studio here at Edit Media in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm Tyler,
And I'm Dakota.
and this is the Bourbon and Business Podcast. How you doing this afternoon, Dakota?
I'm great, Tyler. You got the time of day right.
I know that.
Killing it today.
Yeah, I almost said Memphis, Mississippi, but even though, it kind of is Mississippi, but it's actually in Tennessee.
Some fighting words there, man. You better be careful.
But, yep, you want to introduce our guest to us this morning?
Today we have special guest, Michael Graber, founder and managing partner of Epic Pivot. Michael, welcome.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here with both of you.
Yep, glad to have you. And then what are we sipping on?
We're sipping on Legent bourbon. It's Legent with a T.
I thought that's how you said it. Legend.
Legend.
So, well, it's
It might
good.
sound like legend, so it's Legent.
That's how my grandmother said it.
Is it like a legit legend?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay.
That may be what they're trying to do there.
It says it's a blend of two uniques to make one great.
Well, there you go.
So
So, it's a good bourbon. Good burn to it. It does have a little bit of a different taste that I've never picked up in a bourbon before, and really don't know what it is. Maybe you have more words for that. But
Probably.
I'm going to have to say probably a 8.0.
oh, what's the proof?
It's 100 proof.
94.
Man, I've
You're
been off
close.
today.
Yeah.
So must be something about being up in the mountains. So
I guess so. Is that
But,
where we
uh,
are?
right next to the pyramid. But anyways, Michael, we appreciate you coming on. We like to always take this time just to kind of get your story, where you're from, where you grew up, and then how you got to the point of founding your business.
Okay. So I was born on, how you want me to begin?
Whichever.
It was a dark, stormy night.
So, I am a native Memphian, and both of my grandfathers were entrepreneurial. One of them had a series of what they called mercantile or five and dime stores that later sold to Shaneberg and Goldsmiths and Macy's. And they divested of that, and they all lived here. And that's my paternal grandfather. My maternal grandfather had America's first large private label luggage company. It was on President's Island, and they sold to Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, Zare, etc. for a long time. And once laws changed and Chinese knockoffs and imports were allowed, they sold the business and got out of it. But grew up here, kind of, just fell in love with the food, the culture, the music, all that sort of thing. And ended up with an MFA in poetry. So I'd never imagined being in business, right? I still consider myself a spy in the house of commerce, as Shakespeare said. Whenever I go into a place, I kind of see the energies, understand the culture, can see where systems are breaking down. But if someone wants to go and just look at the books, I can speak numbers. I know how to drive revenue, but I always have this outsider perspective, which makes me kind of like a wolf at a banquet. And so from that, I was going to be a professor. I was teaching. I had my first book published while I was still in graduate school. I won an Editor's Choice Award, but I really hated the politics at the university. And so
Academia, man.
oh my goodness.
It's wild.
People were willing to ruin careers and ruin reputations over schools of thought in poetry. And I thought, how shallow. I had two kids at the time with a chronic illness, and I was just like, what? You're spending your life doing this over whether to rhyme or not? What a waste of energy.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing something I swore I would never do. I got a job, and I fell in love with it. And I started in publishing, and then from there went to a large interactive firm. It became Sapient, Avenue A, all that. It was called IXL. Then went through the ranks in advertising, was a copywriter, creative director, and a brand strategist. But I kept wanting to go deeper and kept scratching the surface. So first were the words, then the words and the pictures, then the informational structure systems, then the strategy driving it. But I wanted to get to that nexus of where value was really created. And so there was this burgeoning field of innovation that was happening. Just leapt in. Different way of doing business.
So what exactly what service does Epic Pivot provide?
Thank you. We have 4 main lines of services. We call them practice areas. So we do formal innovation, a lot of human-centered innovation, methodologies like design thinking, jobs to be done. That sounds kind of airy-fairy, so I'll give you an example of each one as I go through it. In innovation, companies come to us when they have a wicked problem. One wicked problem was one of our clients, Dr. Scholl's, you know, the insole company. They said, look, we spend 4 years and about $20 million to come up with this insole, and we have to charge $25 on the shelf to make up for it. And then private label reverse engineers, they take our reason to believe, our claims, our benefits, and they can charge $7 or $8. But we did all the R&D work. We're in a losing game because our primary sales channel is our competitor. How do we get out of this game? You know, and this is really my basis of success is by saying, I don't know. Let me talk to your users, because all true innovation is human-centered. So we went and recruited a bunch of heavy orthotics users, people that work in retail, nurses that are on their feet, people that work in road crews, etc., and saw what they really want, what they need, what they desire. And we unpacked that. And we figured they wanted to be known. They don't like having to cut and customize this insole. They feel awkward doing it. And so we came back and we said, you know, give them somewhere where they can have a foot profile and they can put in their data, and you get to know the particularities of their gait, their stance, their biometrics, etc. And so we got an Xbox, which can actually scan you biometrically, in a shoebox. And we took it to Walmart and we said, behold, this is the prototype for the Dr. Scholl's kiosk. And so later, just that kiosk now, it got them out of the trap of being on the shelf for the planogram, right? It sits where people have idle time at the pharmacy, typically. But the sales of the kiosk internationally outsell both e-commerce and shelf sales about 4x to 1. So That's innovation. That's one practice area. So then we do insights, deep qualitative research. We hang out with the people who buy your stuff, whether it's a product or if it's a service, right? We go shopping with them. We look in their medicine cabinets. We help them really, really embody their wants, needs, and desires, and then feed that to our clients in actionable ways. Then we have a strategy practice area. If you know all this stuff, you know where the market's going, you know what your customers really, really want, then you have to come up with a plan on how to make it, how to achieve it, how to take it to market, how to package it, promote it, etc. So using all of these things, those were the first 3 practice areas, they're all market and customer focused, right? Whether it's B2B or B2C. But it's fascinating work. We have business anthropologists on staff. You know, we're big geeks and just love it. But then we thought, what if we took all of this stuff and turned it inside the health of the corpus, the body itself, inside the corporation. And we had gotten called in twice. Large hotel, international company had a failed digital transformation. Large children's hospital had a failed transformation. And so we had to reverse engineer why it failed and why traditional change management was broken. So we created a new practice area, taking some of those techniques from those other 3 practice areas, what we call purposeful transformation.
Well, that's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
But, you know, it makes sense. You know, I think so many times a business starts or a company starts and they have an idea or a product, and in their mind, it is a great product, but to the public, does it make sense? Does it fit their needs? Is it, you know, are you creating a want there, you know, like the kiosks that you set out there? I think you see the Dr. Scholl's kiosk out there, and then I think there used to be like a blood pressure thing out there. Yeah. But those, you know, I remember seeing that. Now that you say that, like it leave that in your mind, that brand in your mind.
It made it something they could feel, they could touch, they could be a part of designing their own insole, essentially.
Yeah. Well, tell our listeners, because we have a lot of business owners and business executives that listen to this, what are some, I guess, things that they can avoid when they are pushing a product out to market that maybe could cause it to fail?
That's a great question. First, as Hemingway said, don't fall in love with your darlings. He would always scratch out his best sentences, his prettiest ones, right? If you fall in love with your product, you create these blinders, and no one else is going to fall in love that easily. You have to understand what that product does and how it fits into their lives intimately, in their language, in their love language, in the way that they take things in, their receptive systems. And if you don't do that, you're going to fail. You also need to know that if you just create something that's incrementally better than somebody else, there's a high chance that it's going to fail. We use what we call jobs theory a lot, which is if I'm going to hire your product, I have to fire another product. And what's going to make me fire a product and hire yours? And so working with clients through that is really, really key. Know your market, know your customer would be what I would say.
Great words there.
Yeah, for sure. How important is it to talk to your customers, to actually talk to the end user, to understand them?
Yeah, I was fortunate, published an article a week for about 10 years and had a book published on. And so I got invited to speak at a bunch of innovation conferences, international. And I'll just quote the chief innovation officers of Hershey and NASA, even NASA. The most important thing you can do is leave the office, leave the building, and go and converse with people who have perspectives about what we do. What is their mental model? How do you get to know it without? And so you said a dangerous word, talk. The way I would reframe it would be listen. Right. And you have to ask the right prompts and questions.
Sure.
But you have to listen, and you really have to engage and build rapport, which is the key thing to open them up to deeply understand where your product might fit in their life.
When did you first realize you had a gift, as you said, to look at a situation and be that third party?
I guess the first time I sold a contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just shucking and jiving until then. Yeah.
Well, what do you do with say that someone pushes something out to market, and I know part of your name is Pivot,
Right.
and they realize, hey, we've got an issue here. How are they able to, I guess, pivot and solve that problem during the process of pushing something out to the consumer?
Right. That's a great question. And sometimes it's too late for that particular product. And it may have been a great product that was just misbranded or mispackaged or something, but it's essentially dead on arrival. But if we catch it in time, I think we would do a lot of customer testing. We would do that on the language, on the packaging, on the colors, of the form factors of the product itself. We've done it from everything from the taste of things to working with Afrin, the oxymetazoline, that vasoconstrictor. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It is nose
Yeah,
I know,
it's
he was using terms like vasoconstrictor.
And that's really, but we were looking at what they call the actuators, how it actually expresses itself. And so we went to about 4 countries and had to understand culturally the relationship of sticking stuff up your nose in China, Russia, Brazil, and the United States. It's different in each country. We do not like putting stuff in our nose in the U.S. typically.
Yeah.
But everywhere else is.
They don't mind at all.
Interesting.
They want to be even. The word we heard from most North Americans was waterboarded from the experience.
Gosh.
But they wanted more pressure in the other.
Goodness. Well, tell us about so this all sounds very nuanced, right? There's a lot of nuance that goes into every single of your 4 areas, right? It's not just yep, here it is. It's kind of like, here it is, but let's, dive a little bit deeper. There's always underlinks to everything, which I love. Tell us, do you use technology in your business? Do you use AI at all? What does that look like? How has technology evolved?
Yes, so we have been always on the avant-garde of experimenting with technologies as they come out on behalf of our clients. And in innovation, there's usually a very dotted line between human-centered innovation and technological innovations. But yeah, we're constantly on the search. And I need to say for the record, there's so much lemming-like hoopla around new technologies. Blockchain, the metaverse. So I could keep going here, right? However, and now with AI, it comes back to understanding what humans do well.
Yeah.
We need the critical thinking to write prompts well in AI, understanding what large language models can do,
right,
and understanding where in each of those 4 practice areas that we use it. But yeah, for each of the 4 practice areas, I could do what would be called a cartography or mapping out of where we use the different technologies, but I'll spare you.
Well, tell our listeners a little bit about, we have a lot of people that are business owners and, they're working in the business, but, as far as being that CEO, the director, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. What is that like for you versus the actual job that is being done on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, at a small boutique consultancy where I love doing the work too, it's even more challenging because I'm addicted to doing the work, right? And so I have to very, very purposefully and intentionally set days in my calendar where I just work on the business. And whether that is operations structure, talent hunting, partnerships, new business, or as Bill Gates would often do, take a week off a year and go to a retreat and just think deeply about where society, where culture, where the economy is going and what that means for our business. I have to put that in my Outlook calendar and do it rigorously. I have a very disciplined approach. If you don't do that, you'll just be an operator. Mm-hmm. And what we find is that operators really never experience anything other than incremental growth.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so important to have those times, like you said, where you break away, take a week, and, not only for, your mental health, but also just for the, to be able to explore your mind and see what ideas are out there, to disconnect from the day-to-day things, the emails that are coming in, the whatever else. And I think that that's where you see true innovation and growth come, are those times that you do get somewhere quiet and you can actually think about, hey, what does the future look like? What can we do differently? So that's great to hear.
I think people would be surprised if they took the time and the energy and the effort and actually did that and just got by themselves for a little while and just kind of put the phone down, put it in a different room, just cut out all distractions, just wrote whatever came to their head. I think they'd be absolutely shocked how creative they are. Because a lot of people think they're not creative. But I'm like, Who told you that? Because you couldn't color in the lines in school? Is that why you got told you weren't creative or you couldn't draw? You know, but I firmly believe that everybody has creative capacity.
I do too. But there's this big gulf. I guess I quote Hemingway again when he called the empty page the white bull, the bull that was trying to kill him in the bull ring, right? Yeah. Because he was just scared because it was so formless. And many people are like that. I remember when I was on a church administrative board, and when we got to very perplexing moral issues, it was silent. Yeah. But when we pulled out the spreadsheets where everybody was real comfortable with this finite set of things, everybody just felt like it was Linus's blanket on the old Charlie Brown shows, man. They could get off, but they couldn't go in those gray areas. But people just need a little push. Yeah. So a little creativity coach would be good.
I agree.
What would you tell someone out there that's looking to say, hey, they're wanting to get into the field of work that you're in? What biggest piece of advice could you give them?
Cultivate systemic curiosity.
And as far as, having that curiosity, what are ways that they can cultivate that? How would you think that could happen?
I think it's a very simple practice where you begin with what our Zen friends call a beginner mind, and you never try to act as the expert. You have no answers. You only have questions, and questions only bring up more questions. And the real practice or mantra to keep in mind is you just become that annoying 2-year-old toddler. Why?
What's
until
this? Why? Yeah. What's that?
Yeah.
What
You must have one.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well, that's really what it's about.
And I think that, we hear that so much from successful founders and business owners that they do have the curiosity, and they also don't accept the standard answer of we can't do it that way, or we've always done it that way. You get that in business so much that, this is just the way we do it.
Right.
And it's like, well, okay, why do we have to do it that way? The innovation and when the companies become great is when you have someone that says, actually, well, let's step back from this and see if we can do it a different way. And I think that's what sets brands apart. That's what sets companies apart and people apart. People that are willing to say, hey, just because we've always done it that way, we don't have to do it that way.
That's right. I do think that's what great leaders do, is that we talk about it as the horizons of growth, where once your core business becomes an algorithm that you're just operating and optimizing, that can become very addictive and the revenue can come very addictive. But then if you think about what's adjacent to that could maybe even eclipse that revenue, and what's even in a third horizon that will totally disrupt the category and set the stage for you to win in a new way, then it gets really exciting. But it takes some bravery and some curiosity to be able to get there. And this. What's lacking most with people who are addicted to their core revenue is corporate core courage, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That red tape, man, that bureaucracy gets in the way a lot.
People want to preserve the system, and that becomes
They're
their
comfy in it.
main goal. It's like that spreadsheet.
That's
Yeah.
a great
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
A great example. Well, tell us a little bit about your musical career.
Okay, goodness. I hope we have another 30 minutes. So we just launched a new band. I play in 4 bands right now for fun,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So we just launched a new all original band a month ago called Delta Stardust, and that is
I like it.
Yeah, it's a mix of. We tried to think of what would happen if something experimental like the Flaming Lips or the Chemical Brothers were from the Mississippi Delta.
Yeah.
So they have this yearning for transcendence, but yet they have all these roots influences. And so it's that kind of weird hybrid. My wife and I have a local Grateful Dead tribute band. We play all in the tri-state area. We also play in another Grateful Dead band with people from all over the country. We've played in 3 countries in 27 states. We're going to play in Vegas the third week in March.
Nice.
And then I play in the Bluff City Backsliders, which is a 27-year-old rhythm and blues band from Memphis. We play music from now about 100 years ago, the 20s and 30s, from down in the Delta.
Yeah.
So what instruments do you play?
A lot.
I could tell.
A lot. I write songs. I play a lot. And I play a ton of stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's fun.
What's your favorite one?
Probably electric mandolin with a lot of pedals.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, very cool.
I love
very
good
cool.
meals.
Yeah. Well, Dakota, I think it's a good time for a bourbon break.
Yeah,
You
man.
want to give us your thoughts on it?
It's very stout. It hits you on the nose for sure. I thought it was, I'm going to call that oaky with a zing.
Oaky with a zing.
Yeah, that's what I describe that flavor as. I know what
Okay.
you're talking about. I'm going to go 8.3.
0.3, so we're not far off there. Well, tell our listeners a little bit. So, say someone's listening, they're pushing something out to market, and they say,
Right.
"Hey, what he was talking about resonated with us, and maybe we need to sit down before we, make this attempt and talk with him." How could they get in touch with you or your company?
Yeah, so Epic Pivot, epicpivot.com, Michael at epicfit.com. I am very active on LinkedIn. You can find me there, Michael Graber as well. And I'm just going to go back to say, we can help you know your customers, surprise and delight them, and help you get over any constraining known or unknown mental models about your business.
Great. Well, to all our listeners, however you stream this podcast, if you would give us a rating and you would follow us on social media, and we will see you next week. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
If you have any feedback or would like to be featured, reach out to us at bourbonandbusinesspodcast@gmail.com.
Or find us on Instagram at Bourbon and Business Podcast.
Thanks again for listening.
Follow us for more content and info on the next episode.